I'm just passing through, meeting a friend on our way to Silverado. Well, if you're in my town and you want to find someone, you ask me. All right then, well, he's a young kid full of juice, got a fancy two-gun rig. I love doing these Q&As because they're actually pretty basic for me. When I have a really busy day, typically blurb loaded up, I like to be able to create something in the middle of the day that makes me feel like I'm actually accomplishing something outside of work. That may be healthy or unhealthy, but that remains to be seen. I love the fact that I can do these Q&As. I've got a whole bunch of questions, too many to get through. I'm going to try to keep this to 10. I probably have 30 questions here that people sent in. They're all good, and remember, there is no category that you have to ask about. I will answer questions about anything. My interests in life are far beyond photography, bookmaking, and I love to talk about all these different topics, which is why I do my podcast. Speaking of my podcast, I did one yesterday. And I told a story at the beginning that I think is really funny, and I'm going to tell it again here because I don't think many people listen to my podcast. So the funny story was on Sunday afternoon, I had been working on blurb films all day on Sunday, these little 1 minute long Twitter Q&A films. And the weather was beautiful, and I thought, man, I got to get outside and do something. So I said to my wife, let's go for a hike, and I called my buddy Larry, and I said, let's go for a hike. So we go, and we're trying to figure out where to go. I said, let's go up high, see if there's any snow remaining, and check out something new. So we're driving up there. My wife says, hey, let's go do that hike that we did in the winter with snowshoes. I said, okay. So we get there, and it's a one-way, one direction, cross-country ski specific trail during the winter. And it's a huge loop that looks like your lower intestine. In fact, part of it is called the intestine loop. So we start walking, and we're probably a mile and a half in, and we come to this hilltop that's kind of an exposed hilltop, and it has a bunch of healthy aspen, but a ton of downfall. And I looked at it and I said, you know what loves that environment specifically? And they were like, no, gee, Dan, you're an outdoor expert. You should inform us, enlighten us. I said, elk love that, and bears love it. Because elk love it because there's cover, but they can see, and if you haven't seen a bull elk with a huge rack run through downfall in a dense forest, when the physics are involved, it seems impossible, but they do it, and they're masterful at it. Bears love it too because of all the downfall. They tear the stumps of trees apart looking for grub. So we keep walking, and I'm like, hey, I'm dazzling them with my outdoor knowledge. And we get a little bit further on, and there's a stump that's been obliterated. And I said to my wife, what did that? She goes, a bear. I go, what are they looking for? She goes, insects. Check. Foreshadowing. That's called foreshadowing. So about 10 minutes later, we're walking. We're coming down this trail, this intestine trail, and we come to a T. And to the left is back to the car, and to the right it says overlook of some sort. And I've never been on this trail before. And I said, we should probably go just check out the overlook and see what it looks like. Then we'll go back to the car. We turn right to the overlook, and I look over, and probably 30 yards away is the biggest black bear I've ever seen in my life. It was a monster. I mean, I've seen black bears, and I've had a couple of really close encounters with black bears when I was little. This thing looked like a sub-mountain of the mountain range, and the hump on the back of its neck was the biggest hump of any black bear I think I've ever seen, and it was just staring at us. And so we just kept walking, get down to the overlook, and my first thought was, hey, we'll bushwhack up to where the intestine trail is, but it was so dense, and there was so much downfall, and my friend, to his credit, was very intelligent and said, look, I'm not going in there because we can't see 10 feet away in the density of how thick that is. And so I'm taking my chances up here. So I started pounding rocks together, and my wife started singing a Carole King song. And apparently the bears are not down with Carole King because it went away. So I credit my wife and just my sheer physical hulking size for intimidating this 1,000-pound. It looked like a bulldozer with hair, basically. Anyway, it was kind of funny. We got a good laugh out of it, and no one was injured, and the bear seemed really kind of bored with us in general. Okay, these questions, like I said, I've got 10. I really appreciate people who sent in, and remember, I'm one person with one opinion. That is all it is. That's all that matters. The first question is, what's the first step in making a photo book? And I have made, with Blurb alone, I think I've made 240 books over the last decade, and I know that's a lot. And a lot of them are experiments and tinkering, but I've done it so many times that I take a lot for granted. And I think the first step is to download the software, whatever software it is you want to use, whether it's the InDesign plugin or Blurb Bookright, and make a test book. For some reason, people turn making a test book into a negative. It's actually really fun. It's a positive because no one else is going to see the test book. It's just you. And the test book is not intended to be beautiful. The test book is a, let's say, 7x7 soft cover 20-pager. You're going to put in black and white, color, toned black and white, and you're going to take about half a dozen different typefaces that you think you're interested in using, and you're going to run them at 8 point, 10 point, 12 point, 14, all the different font sizes to get an idea of what each typeface looks like at what size. That is critical because typography is a big part of this book. Then you're going to print that on the 2 or 3 different papers that you think you're most interested in. That is a test book. Then you keep that test book as a roadmap for every single thing you make here on out. And again, no one's going to see it. It's a roadmap. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. It's fun. It's inexpensive, and it makes bookmaking a lot more fun. That was question number 1. Question number 2 is, am I going to do more films about film photography or analog photography? And the short answer is maybe. I might do more films on analog photography or film photography if I can find a way to do it intelligently, where it adds to the conversation and focuses on the work itself. The online community in particular is so hype-filled about film photography, it's a bit hard to comprehend. The industry of photography, no one talks about this. Even the people who are using film would never go into that kind of minutia about it. They just use it, they do their assignments, they do their jobs, and they move on. But in the online community, film is all the rage. It's probably or arguably one of the most intense conversations happening online in the photography space right now. That's a good thing. It will keep film alive. Even though the prices of film now are ridiculously high, I feel bad for anyone who has to buy film on a consistent basis if a client's not paying for it, because it's really pricey. The problem I have is that I don't care about anything except the imagery. I've got to see the final product. If the final product isn't good, it doesn't matter how the imagery was made. 99% of what I see in the online space with film photographers talking and showing and talking about film, the work is what I would call first-year photo student work. It's very average. And again, 99% of what I've made in my life is average. I worked for 10 years. I mean, I got a degree in photojournalism, graduated, and had no idea what I was doing. None. I knew that the first day at the newspaper, the first time I got an assignment. I was like, I'm in over my head. Photo editor was like, well, you know what? Sink or swim. We'll know by the end of the week if you're going to make this or not. And he said to me, he looked at me and said, end of the second or third week at the newspaper, no joke, as an intern, he goes, I'm going to send you to Alabama to try to find Charles Barkley's family, and I need you to get to his family, introduce yourself, photograph them, get in their house, and I want you to photograph them during the NBA Finals so that we can get their reaction to Charles playing in the NBA Finals. And he looked at me and he goes, can you handle this? And I was like, I have no idea. I wasn't even old enough to rent a car. The paper had to rent the car. I was in so far over my head, it wasn't even funny. Now, I did meet Charles Barkley's family and learned all about him. His mother and his grandmother were incredibly nice to me. His cousins, they let me in their house. I photographed him when the games were being played. So I learned a lot. I made a couple of pictures that were in focus. But it took me about 10 years of working daily assignments before I really figured out what I was doing as a photographer. It took me that long to figure out who I was and like what my style was and what I was the best at in terms of not better than any other people, but what my skill set, what style of photography did it apply to the most. It took a long time. When I look at the majority of film photography being discussed, whether it's from a brand or a photographer, it's just average work. And when you've done this long enough, that doesn't register on the interest scale. It has to be better. So if I can do films about film photography that show work that, number one, is good and relevant and worthy of being shown, that's step one. And step two would be, what am I bringing to the conversation that's going to educate people about film photography itself? Because it's been pretty well covered online. That's one thing that film photography online has done, is like the minutia of processing and developing and all the, the craziness of doing reviews about cameras that are 30 or 40 years old. That's been covered without a doubt. And I have no interest in that or adding to that conversation. So maybe. That's the short answer, is maybe. Question number 3, do I sell prints? Do I sell work? And do I do assignments? No. I stopped in 2010. Since 2010, I've done one assignment, which was a year long, and very atypical of anything I had done in the past in an industry I had never worked in. So I took that because it was interesting and challenging. None of you will ever see the work, And some of the images are hanging in an office space in a city in the southern half of the United States. Big. I'm talking like 20 and 30 feet wide. Some of those images that I made are there. Again, none of you will ever see that. None of you will see the work that I did. That's not important. It was commercial work. So it's not something that I would put out and say, this defines me as a human being. It was just an assignment. Every other thing that comes my way, I send to someone else. I try to send assignments to other photographers. And in terms of prints are more of a pain for me to do now than they're worth. And I just don't care about selling pictures or being known as a photographer or doing assignments. That flame went out a long time ago and it ain't coming back. So no, I don't. Question number 4, notes on photography. How do I choose my story? I'm paraphrasing here. Access and permission and why you see so many urban abstract landscapes and street photography. Yes, so I choose stories. Everything I do is people-based. I'm not a landscape photographer. I don't shoot abandoned buildings. I don't shoot urban abstract landscapes. That doesn't appeal to me. People do that because it doesn't require any setup. You can just go and do it. No location releases, no model releases, no human interaction, no dialogue, no permission. You just show up and bang it out. I've done that before. It's just not what I prefer to do. I prefer, for whatever reason, I don't know, man. He's gonna keep calling me. He's gonna keep calling me. Cameron, get over here. I like people-based stuff, and that makes it sticky. It's complicated. It's time-consuming. It's fickle. You get permission, you show up, you get denied. You get permission, you show up, some guy's in your face screaming, I'm gonna tear your head off, you shouldn't be here. That's just part of it. And for whatever reason, that's what gets me excited about making pictures. And so that's how I typically choose content story ideas. Is I either listen to a song, I read a book, it sparks something in my head, that translates to location and that translates to people, and then I start putting it together. Or it could just be based on a geographic region. For example, you take the US-Mexico border, you've got 2,200 odd miles of story. That is, if you want it to be 100% people-based. You could do something on ICE, you could do Border Patrol, you could do people that are crossing illegally, you could do people that are crossing legally, you could do stories on families that were divided on one side of the border or the other, you could do a story about business, you could do a story about trucking based on the truckers who are coming across every day. It is endless. That is what I do to come up with project ideas. That is not right or wrong, that is not better than these other stories and other methodologies of shooting. That's just what I prefer to do for whatever reason. And I do very, very little of it now. I have no time to do those kind of projects. And COVID, for people like me, COVID was a monumental, like a shovel to the medulla oblongata. Severely impacted my ability to function. Question number 5. Hi, Daniel. Hi, how are you? Come here often? With mobile phone camera tech getting more sophisticated and relying heavily on computational photography, could you or would you shoot a project professionally on one? Cheers, Ian Leicester. I'll never pronounce that right, UK. I can pronounce the UK. Of course, why not? I kind of equate mobile phone photography to film photography. And I know photographers who are obsessed with the idea that they are mobile phone photographers, and I could care less. Robert Clark did a book with Sony Ericsson in 1997. That was it. Once he did that book, he was the one who did it first. Nothing else matters. If you're in 2007 making some big claim about doing a book with a mobile phone, you missed it. Robert Clark did it. I think it was Robert Clark, and I think it was 97, and I think it was Sony Ericsson. At the time, I was like, that's interesting. Once that was done, I was like, this is just another camera. Why are we obsessing over the fact that people are doing stories with a specific camera? That'd be like saying, oh, this is a Pentax K1000 story. Better get a K1000. Yep, Pentax K1000. That's all that matters. Everyone stand back. Take a deep breath. Pentax K1000. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Film image, film image, film image. I'm like, it's average. Shouldn't be talking about it. But yes, the mobile phone, what I love about the mobile phone is that it got the general public excited about photography in a way that hadn't happened since the Kodak Brownie camera. And that is a cool thing for everyday people to be able to document their kids and their families and their experiences and their history. That is a really cool thing. But in the hands of pros, I am bored to death with the concept of mobile photography. Whatever, just make something good. That's all I'm asking. Just try to make it good. But I would totally do it if it felt right. I mean, my friend, I'm getting ready to do a blog post on Shifter. My friend Jimmy Fikes did 3 magazines, South Africa, somewhere in the South Pacific, and a third location I can't remember off the top of my head, and it was all done with iPhone, and I had no idea. I just looked at it and said, this is a well done production. These are good images, this is a good magazine, the design is good, the packaging is good, success. And then he was like, by the way, I did that with a phone, and I'm like, wow, good, cool. And that's also nice about the phone, and by the way, you put a phone in the hands of someone like Cochi Hernandez in San Francisco, and you watch what he's done on the street with an iPhone, that's pretty great. But that guy has a background and a knowledge and education in photography that goes well beyond 99% of the people out there walking the earth. That guy is a lot more than a guy that takes mobile phone pictures. He's got a lot more going on. That's why I find him interesting. That's why I find his work interesting. So it's a combination of things. Question number 6, do I know David Yarrow? The answer is no. I think I've heard that name, but I also know someone else with the last name Yarrow, and I think that's what's happening is I'm confusing him. So I don't know who that is, but I will look them up, because if you're suggesting I take a look, I will. Absolutely, I'm curious who that is and what he's doing. But as of today, as of right now, as of 55 degrees, cloudy and windy, no, I do not know who he is. But again, that doesn't mean anything, because my head's pretty much to the ground all day long with like 3 or 4 different things, and that's it. Okay, question number 7. For the next round of Q&A, what is the point? Unless, this is a long one. Bear with me here. I think I know what he's asking, or she. What is the point? Unless it's a sunset or a long exposure at a waterfall, nobody cares at all. Okay, that is hilarious. That is hilarious. I think he wanted to say photo books, but it says, my phone books lying unvisited on the shelf above the box, carefully labeled old cameras. My prints buried in a book in a box and badly built rack of miscellaneous items. Ho-hum. All my images are dull, boring, repeats of previous image taken at a time previous to this one. Nauseating, literally. Again, this is hilarious. I think we all have been through this phase in our career multiple times. Stare at Lightroom, a new batch with old eyes, same eyes, critical eyes, technical eyes, accusing eyes, nothing special, no connection or innovation, no faux mind or background, no connection. Oh look, another Buddhist temple drum with the sun just so. So what? Markets and snails for sale, monks in silhouette, motorbikes loaded with ducks with entire families, fishermen on boats dressed in sunset beams that break the Mekong River in two. Too many, too much, too often, too sticky, sweet like syrup piled high and overflowing an already sticky bun too much. So the question is, do you ever feel the same? That's maybe the best question I've ever had. That is hilarious. Have I ever felt the same? Well, I think we've all had moments of doubt, moments of questioning, but the short answer is I have never felt that way. Never. Because I understand how much is out there. I don't look at work online. That is a complete waste of time to me. 99% of the work I see online, even from professionals, is boring, commercial, crafted, phony. It's designed to get work, right? What I prefer are the long-term folks who have done projects like the books on my shelves. Tony Schwa's project on 10 years of working in the Soviet Union and doing his book. I look at that book. You cannot look at something like that and not just say, I've got work to do. I have got to go out in the world. The other thing, the innate ability that I have that I was born with is I don't care. I don't care what you think. I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm out to do the work that I think I need to do regardless. I could care less of what the photo industry or an art buyer or photo editor or anyone online thinks of my work. I don't care. That is a skill that if you don't have, develop it. That's one of the things that I love about Rick from Beyond, who is my senior co-editor on AG23, is we have this conversation all the time. We get haters all the time that are reaching out, photographers in particular, that reach out and hate on projects. And AG's just the next in the line of projects that photographers, some of them, are going to want to hate on. And Rick and I just laugh to ourselves and we're like, we don't care. If you want to hate on it because we don't want any part of you. Like, if you don't get it, you don't want to play along, no problem. That's your prerogative. But we don't care. We're moving on because we are doing what we want to do. If I had gone out in the industry and asked photo editors if I should start my project called Man vs. Nature, which I worked on for 10 years, and I did shark diving and big wave surfing and off-highway vehicle recreation parks and a myriad of other stories. There is not a single photo editor on earth that would have said, that's a great idea, you should go and do that. I could care less what they think. I'm doing that project. It's my project, my life, my story, my mind, and I'm taking it and I'm running with it. So I don't look at the 99% of what you're describing is content. You know, the Buddhist temple drum. I know photographers who will go to a place like Burma and they will pay monks and locals and everything else to go into the temples and set up photographs and then shoot, you know, thousands of frames of these scenarios over and over and over again, and they call that documentary photography. It's not. It's ridiculous. It's set up. It's stock, content-y kind of stuff that's a cliche that people think other people want to see. However, there's an upside to it, is maybe that money allows the folks in the frame to do something they weren't able to do. Maybe some kid somewhere in middle America sees that and says, what is that place? What kind of temple complex is that? And at some point later in his life, maybe he's involved in a way of preserving, or, you know, it has such an impact on him that he sees it and says, I want to get involved and I want to preserve those temples. So there's always an upside and a positive side, even to the stuff that you're describing. There's a flip side of that coin. Lastly, I don't define my life with photography. So yeah, whatever. I mean, let's take, for example, the classic spring cycling races that are happening right now. Pogacar won the last one. There's one guy who wins. Then there's everybody else, right? The guy that finished last in this last, I think it's Liège, Bastogne-Liège. What about everybody else in that race? You know what? They're still out hammering 260 Ks, you know, with 5,000 feet of climbing or whatever it is. Just because they didn't win doesn't mean that their ride didn't mean something. So I would just stop looking at photography online for a year. I would only look at physical printed photography books and do not look at photography online, because it is, the vast majority is empty calories fast food. But that is a great question, and thanks for sending it in, and I definitely got a laugh out of that. Question number 8. I live in a rather isolated area in Saudi Arabia, and I do not have many people to bounce my photo book ideas off of. How might I find/hire a creative to help with design and provide ideas from a different point of view? That's pretty easy. I would just reach out online. You could actually do a search for folks in Saudi Arabia that might be able to help you. I'm always a fan of meeting in person, especially with a designer. But now with COVID and also with distances, and if you're in an isolated part of the kingdom, then you may have to reach out online. You could try something like Reedsy, R-E-E-D-S-Y. That is a website that has what I would call a vetted set of creatives that will be able to work with cover design, page design, logo design. You know, there's all kinds of levels of folks in there and talents that they have, but that's what I would do. His second question is, in your yoga practice, do you prefer to stick with one sequence or do you change things up? Do you follow videos or your own thing? I do not follow videos. I took yoga in person in a yoga studio in LA for probably 4 years, and I got very lucky. It was a yoga studio at a gym, and I'm not a gym person. I don't go to the gym. I haven't been in years. I do everything on my own. But I looked over one day and there was a yoga class with like 6 people, and 5 were women, and 1 was the tightest human being, a male, tightest man I've ever seen in my life. And he was struggling. And I looked in there and I watched him for like on and off for a couple of days, and I was like, man, you know, I don't know anything about yoga, but that guy's like, he's really putting in the effort. I got to go see what this is about. Well, it turns out the instructor was a famous LA yogi who basically moonlighted and taught at this gym twice a week. I didn't know that. I didn't know who she was from anyone. So I got in there and I took, basically, I had private instruction from her for 4 years. And it totally changed my life. And it was the same 6 people twice a week, and we would go in there, and she knew exactly what I could do and what I couldn't, and she refined my entire practice. When I left LA, I took what she had taught me and I continue it at home. I do like doing the same sequence for years at a time. Our modern brain, our internet brains, trick us into thinking we have to have something newer, something better, something to adapt. Yoga's been around for 3,000 years, roughly. These sequences have been around for several thousand years. Do I really need to change them? So what I do is a combination of calisthenics, body weight, and yoga. I do 4 parts, 4 sequences. The first one is a calisthenic. Second one is core. Third one is sort of body weight strength. And fourth is yoga. It takes about 45 minutes. I try to do it 4 to 5 days a week, depending. I got my second dose yesterday, so I'm taking today off. I feel fine, but I'm taking it off. Okay, question number 9. We are rolling, people. Love your work and videos. I'm just the belle of the ball. It has changed the way I look at photography and social media. Good. If I can change your mentality about one thing, and that one thing is social media, I'm doing something right. It is a cancer in our culture and society, and photography and social media, in my opinion, is an embarrassment. Got a question for your next Q&A. I hear you talking a lot about good and bad photography, but what defines good photography? I find it hard to judge other people's work, but also mine. This is a question of questions. We could spend hours talking about this, but I think the easiest way to sum this up is if you have an emotional response to an image, then it's probably a good image. I look at, like I said, 99% of what I see in the online photo space, average, not good imagery. Occasionally, I will see something that you're like, wow, that picture, I saw something recently, someone had sent me, it was a black and white 35 still that an amateur photographer had made, and it was phenomenal. It was just one of those magic moments, one framer that you just go, wow, that's amazing. I photographed kids commercially for 7 years. I made plenty of pictures of kids that I looked at and said, this didn't work, didn't work, didn't work. Parents looked at it and said, that's the best picture we've ever had of our child. So was it good to me? No. Was it good to them? Yes. That's all that matters. I take my opinion, throw it out. Now, a commercial client looks at it and says, that's good. You know, that has a little bit less relevance to me. It's good for commercial reasons. But again, I think it's emotional reaction. A lot of the photography that I grew up responding to, Larry Burroughs reaching out, 1966, Hilltop LZ, Vietnam, that picture, that's the picture that made me a photographer. I think if you showed the online crowd that picture today, they'd probably bag on it. But it made me feel in a way I had never felt before. I'd never seen race relations in a situation like that. I'd never seen Larry Burroughs work in color. I had never seen that sort of Hilltop LZ, the color of the earth in Vietnam. All of those things combined, I was like, oh my God. And that was probably in middle school or high school. It completely stopped me in my tracks. I'd never felt that way. I said, I want a camera and I want to make other people feel that way. Is that a good photograph to modern photographers? I have no idea. So I don't really again, I'm lucky in the sense that I don't care what other people think of my work. If 10,000 strangers on YouTube tell me something is good, it has very little relevance to me because who are they? The flip side is great. 10,000 people are excited by this image. There is a positive aspect of that. I'm like, okay, they're stoked. If that fires them up to go do something on their own, that's a good thing. But does that feedback have relevance to me? Not really. Because remember, YouTube is about one thing. YouTube is about how fast and how far you will sell out. Because 8 seconds after you have a YouTube channel, you have YouTube analytics. And the analytics are a roadmap for commercialism. The second you start basing your YouTube channel on analytics, it's not your channel anymore, it's the algorithms. And that's what the vast majority of people on YouTube do, is they sell out because they're trying to make money. So, their feedback, great. Whatever's going to get likes, whatever's going to get subs, they're going to do. And that's not really what I want because that's not my goal and that doesn't mean anything to me. When I have a photographer come through this house who I respect, who sits down and looks at something I did and said, you know, all it takes, I'll give you an example. This happened a couple weeks ago. Photographer comes through here. He's one of the best people working in photography. He's been one of the best working photographers over the last 30 years. He comes through, I'm showing him a book sample showing him just for the physicality of the book, the material combination, the ingredients. He's flipping through. He actually starts halfway through the book. Gets to the end, flips, goes back to the front, starts over, and goes slowly, goes through each thing. He would turn a page of the book, look up, make eye contact, and go like this. This meant that's a good frame. That's all it takes. That means a zillion times more than subs and likes on YouTube because the person who is doing the looking, the review, knows exactly what he's doing. He's been doing it forever. He's way better than me. I look up to him and I go, that opinion has relevance. So whatever is good in your mind, again, emotional response, I say it's good. Question number 10, last one. Take a deep breath. Let's see. Oh, last question is about online photography courses. Yes, I am a big fan of online photography courses, especially during COVID, because there ain't much of an alternative at this point. Santa Fe Photo Workshops here in town. You've got Main Media Workshops. Santa Fe Photo Workshops here in town, their roster of instructors is like nonstop working pros. You want to know how to shoot an environmental portrait, how to light one, how to deal with a client while you're shooting an environmental portrait, you can go to the workshops. You want to know doc work, Norman Mouskoff and Kurt Marcus, two photographers who live within 5 miles of here, they co-teach a class about doc photography. Might want to look those guys up in terms of historic content, how many books they've done, how many projects they've done. Kurt Marcus alone, his archive is bigger than my house. No joke. It is incredible. The building that houses his archive is nicer and bigger than my house. And he's shot everything. So these places go out and they do the legwork for you. They get these instructors to come in and share their knowledge of how to do what they are doing. And that is a goldmine. I took my first Santa Fe workshop in 1997 when I worked for Kodak. I took Chris Rainier's class. And the second class I took was supposed to be a Magnum photographer, but he got caught up on an assignment, and I had a photographer named Rob Kendrick, who's a Texas-based photographer who's really, really good and really smart and shot like half the year editorially and the other half advertising, and he was very good at both, and he was very cool and down to earth and helpful, and we're still friends. So these workshops literally changed my career. Now you can do them online. So no matter where you are, for the most part, you can sign in and take these classes, and they are fantastic. So I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of continuing education. Whether it's with photography or any other subject matter, I think all the other subject matters combine to help you with your photography. So that is Q&A 17, and I appreciate you tuning in, and I will be back again soon.